Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of my Hey God, We Need Answers video series where I discuss questions that were submitted to Source and written about in this book, Hey God, We Need Answers by Elliot Eli Jackson, who channels the source of all things. Source has answered the questions that were submitted to them. So the one that I chose to pick out for today's video is humanity getting better? Source's answer says, yes, it will continue to do so, yet there will always be a certain resistance to light and love. I picked this question in particular because of everything going on right now with the protests and the riots over George Floyd's death and Breonna Taylor's death and the countless others that have been killed or unfairly treated in a myriad of ways by law enforcement and other institutional systems. For people of color, it can be a really dangerous place in the world right now. And it is sometimes difficult to see these things happen in the world and remember that humanity is slowly but surely getting better. I think, if anything, the current reaction and participation of so many people in the United States in protesting this situation and the institutionalized racism as a whole, especially when it comes to law enforcement, I think that it is very clearly indicative that things are moving in a different direction than they ever have been before. As I spoke about in a previous video, on December 21st, 2012, our planet entered, well, all the planets in the solar system actually entered into what Source has termed the radius alignment. So we came into a new planetary alignment, which jump-started a mass change, a rise in the mass consciousness. And the mass consciousness has been rising steadily ever since. So even though when things like this can happen, it can be difficult to see that in the moment, we actually are on a upward trajectory of raising our vibrations. For so many people to come out and show their support for the Black Lives Matter movement and to show their true feelings about institutionalized racism in the United States, it is extremely encouraging. You know, this has not happened in this century so far. This is the first time something like this has happened. And, you know, there have been so many deaths that have been associated with the Black Lives Movement and so many that, you know, happened before that, that obviously, you know, just got overlooked by the public at large, by, you know, white individuals in particular. And to see now so many people speaking out and so many people speaking up and caring vocally and, you know, demanding that, you know, lawmakers and our public institutions change and do something about this issue, it is proof that we are getting better and our vibrations as a whole is rising. When Source answers that there will always be a certain resistance to light and love, they mean that, you know, people are each on their own individual path and towards remembering self. When we fully remember self, that is when we accept that everyone and everything is equal to ourselves, and we fully love ourselves and thus one another. If we do not love ourselves, we cannot love another. So when individuals will behave in ways that are not in the best and highest good for themselves or for their others, that indicates that there is a piece of themselves that they have not accepted, and they are projecting that onto the outside world, because everyone and everything is simply a mirror back to us. And so when they are looking in the mirror of a person of color and their reaction or response is racism or rage in some way, then that indicates there is, you know, something that they cannot or will not accept within themselves that they then choose to take out on this individual. Lower vibrations, as I've spoken about in many videos, obviously want to capitalize on these weak points within us. And I don't mean weak as to judge it, but weak as in it allows them to infiltrate us. So anything that we are not accepting about ourselves that is sort of a weak point in our armor against lower vibrational portions of the universe who are constantly attempting to whisper things to us that would, cause us to believe and create action that would be not in the best and highest good of ourselves or of others. So when something like this happens, where a police officer is kneeling on the neck of an individual for, a little under 10 minutes, that is a very clear lower vibrational driven situation. Many times what can happen is if one of us allows our vibration to dip so low that we can allow lower vibrational entities to attach themselves to us, and you allow your vibration to dip lower and lower, that even more lower vibrational portions will attach themselves to you. You can become so infested with these lower vibrations that they can, in essence, take you over and sort of take your body for a joyride like it's a car they've stolen. And many times when this happens to people, they will commit these acts of violence that they can't remember doing because essentially they were not there. Their spirit was not in their body at the time the lower vibrations sort of took them over. And I would be willing to bet that for an action such as the one that caused George Floyd's death, I'd be willing to bet that that was also that type of situation where lower vibrations sort of took hold of that cop because of things that he chose to receive and accept about himself that were not truthful to his being, that caused him to not accept his others who are Black and African American as equal to himself. Then that created so many weak points in his armor against lower vibrations that they were able to sort of take him over and commit such a tragic act. This is not to excuse that police officer or let him off the hook for what he did, because at the end of the day, he was the one who allowed them to come into himself, whether he was mentally aware of it or not, and allowed them to, use his being to commit these acts. Source frequently says that, when someone does something that we do not like, that is not in the highest vibration, it's not them. They have said that a number of times in my presence, and at first it's hard to accept, especially when that thing is happening to you, but at the end of the day, it's the truth. It's not them. It is not them in their body at that time creating that action. Now, did that individual let those lower vibrations in? Absolutely. And that is their fault. And they do incur karma for something like that. And if they do not balance that karma in this lifetime, then they will have another lifetime where they will have to balance that karma eventually, because we all are responsible for the things that we create and for the actions and behaviors and decisions that we make in our lifetimes where we did not do things that were in the best and highest good for ourselves or others. But the point I'm trying to make is that each one of us is bound by those same rules and laws. Each one of us is on our own individual separate path from anyone else. We're all essentially living in our own little universes, and all these little universes overlap with one another to create the reality that we see here now. But just because some of us are at a higher vibration than some others, that does not mean that we are better than them or that they are horrible people, because The truth is, we are all the same. We are all equal to one another. We are all light and love. We are all pieces of source having a physical reality and experience at this time. So if one or many of us forgets who and what we really are, it is on those who have remembered who and what we really are to show them compassion and empathy and understanding and attempt to assist them in raising their vibration as much as we can. It is always, at the end of the day, the decision of the person to either raise their vibration or not, to either heal their traumas or not. But it is important that we try to help them because there is no other way. No one wakes up one day and says, "Oh, I don't want to be a racist anymore. I want to love everybody." They need to be shown a different way of being. And in turn, they must believe and accept that way of being if they are to change. But no matter what happens, we are all each responsible for what we create. And so this person and others will have another opportunity to correct and balance these situations that they've created. Another thing I wanted to touch on briefly is that while humanity as a whole is getting better, while the mass consciousness is rising and we are seeing more evidence of that, there are those out there who do not want us to remember who we really are, who do not want us to remember that we are beautiful and wonderful creators, that we are powerful, and that we can create the reality that we all desire to have. They wish for us to remain in fear and wish for us to point our fingers at each other and say, this group of people is the reason why I am unhappy in my life and why I do not have the things that I want to have in my life. And many of these people who wish for us to stay asleep and not wake up have the money and resources to keep us there. And so that is sort of the difference you're seeing between the daytime peaceful protests in some areas and then the nighttime rioting. They are different events that are occurring and involving different people. And these other people who have some power and influence are causing these riots to happen and many other situations and belief systems and ideologies that keep us stuck in a cycle of victimhood rather than assisting us with remembering our creatorship and coming into our own power. So I just want to encourage all of you to not believe every single thing that you hear and see on the media. Always do your own research. Always fact check everything. Even if you go to a fact checking website, check it yourself because odds are you're not getting the full truth and the truth will set you free. That's it for this video. I will see you guys very soon for another question and answer. Stay safe out there.